All right, good morning and welcome. And what we're doing today is the show around politics and EVs. I happen to be at SodaCon in Baltimore earlier this year, and I had the pleasure of interviewing Elena. I don't know, I'm going to butcher her last name. I think it's Cicotelli. She does a podcast strictly on EVs called All Things EV.
In progress.
So if you are interested in EVs, you might want to check out her podcast. So I just got a quick clip from that I'm going to start with. So here we go. So that's a quick piece of the interview. If you are interested in EVs and you have some thoughts on that, Elena has been doing a podcast for quite a while on that topic, and she's one of the bigger experts in that sphere, I think, from a podcast point of view. Not to endorse her all that much, but I really like what she does, and it's a great interview. It's about 25 minutes. You can check it out on the AutoHub show YouTube channel from the SodaCon. I had a bunch of different interviews, but that was the one on EVs. So let's get into it. Here we go. And good morning.
manager of Frank Bean's Kia in Langhorne. I just wanted to take a minute to talk about Larry Feldman, Career Changers USA. Larry and I have been working together for about the last 12 years now.
Recording
and
stopped.
Anything I've ever needed as far as recruiting, training, Larry has been right there. Larry's got me salespeople, he's got me managers, he's got me technicians even through the toughest times in the industry. And he is just the kind of guy who's going to tell you exactly what's on his mind. He's going to tell you exactly what he thinks. But Larry also has the expertise to back it up. When he was in the dealership world, he was a top performer. And that's really important to my staff, especially as it pertains to training. A lot of people can come in and teach out of a textbook, but Larry has real world experience dealing with customers, dealing with situations in dealerships that we go through on a daily basis and try to train on. But Larry's been through it, so he can really empathize with the people and tell you what's worked for him and maybe what way not to go. Larry is just always at a 10. I mean, his energy level is always up there. And I think people, they just love that and they feed off of it. He's not faking it. He is genuinely excited to come in and help you. He's excited to come in and help grow your business. And he's one of those people who just really enjoys seeing dealers succeed and have a lot of fun at the same time.
Life is about connection, having a support system to lean on, and roads to endless possibility. At every turn, guiding the way, we are building the connections that move you.
So what would your dealership feel like if your entire sales staff was literally on fire, your sales and service staff? They were nonstop all over social media, completely dominating your marketplace. They could do it in 30 days or less and then continue their education to do it for an entire 6 months or a year. You literally would completely take over the entire marketplace and no one would be able to compete with you. And that's what we can do for you. So when you're walking around your community, whether you're at local restaurants or you're going to the gym, you don't want to be bothered? Fine, you won't be bothered. But a lot of people will walk up to you and say, oh my God, I love your social media. Your staff is amazing. We love what you're doing in the community. We want to come buy a car from you. We want to get an oil change at your dealership. Your community is absolutely going to love you. And it doesn't matter what platform you're on. You could be on TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, all social media platforms. You will literally be all over the place. And not only will you have ads running, but your own staff is going to be promoting your brand and promoting themselves within the dealership and within the business. So it's like running an ad times 100-fold because your entire staff is participating in the process. I've traveled all over North America. I've trained Toyota. I've trained Nissan. I've been to driving sales. I've been to Women in Auto. I get hired as a speaker for conferences at universities all over the country. And I can help change the trajectory of your dealership right now.
All right, good morning and welcome. So let's get into it. So, all right, here we go. Let's go back here and let's stop. And there we go. So we're going to start with Mr. Brent. He was the first appearance person on this show, at least today, and then we'll go from there. So Brent, tell us a little bit more about what's going on in the EV side, what you're doing, and what do you think the possible shifts on the political spectrum are going to do in terms of impacting the EV transition? Actually, Automotive Ventures, he had some comments this morning on LinkedIn about that, which was kind of interesting, but go ahead.
Thanks for having me on the show this morning. Always fun to hang out with you. Prior Tesla, automotive industry, I don't know, 25 years or so now. Politics has always been an important part of economics, right? You can't separate the two of them. Winners and losers are basically decided with public policy, tax policy. All those things are interconnected for good or for bad. And depending on what side of the EV transition you're on, you can either be, super pleased with it or super pissed at it. But at the end of the day, the EV transition has been politicized, and it's pretty sad, because the fact of the matter is in our world, we tend to go into two tribes really quickly. And so whatever tribe you're in, you just start marching that line. And the transition to EVs is a tech transition. It's a transition that's going to clean up the air in our cities. It's going to help public health. It's going to, I mean, there's so many ways that so many of us can benefit from cleaner transportation, cleaner air. And the fact that it's become politicized is really kind of a sad statement on the state of affairs, socially, in our countries and in our world. So, if there's a conservative shift, as we've seen over in a couple of countries in Europe now, and here in the States, we're seeing, a lot of interest in more conservative governance. We may see public policy shift away from encouraging EV sales. But I think once you have a shift and a momentum in the marketplace, that shift can either be sped up or slowed down by government. But I don't think EVs are going away. It's just the speed at which they're adopted is dependent to some extent on public policy.
Appreciate that. And we have a new person joining us today, Ken. If you don't know Ken, he's an EV enthusiast and a supporter across Canada. But Ken, I'll let you share what you do and what that's all about, and also what you think about the shifts in global politics are going to do the EV transition.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. Okay, perfect. I've been in this space for about 14 years. Behind the scenes for a couple to really roll out EV infrastructure across the continent, and we had that done in 2012. So what it did is it really proved to the world, which was the goal, that 100% zero-emission vehicles exist. Tesla exists. At that point, there really wasn't too many. There definitely wasn't one that could really travel across the nation that was pure EV. So we put EV charging stations in across the whole continent in Canada, and then drove across to Canada in the middle of a Canadian winter, right? Over 10,000 kilometers or 6,000 miles in a car that was faster and sexier than most people's car on the planet, on an EV infrastructure that was installed, and people didn't know, really, like less than 1% of people probably knew that an EV existed back then globally. And they definitely didn't know EV infrastructure existed that would allow you to travel for free, emission free, like zero tailpipe emission free, obviously not the grid. The reason we did it in the winter was just to prove that EVs could also travel in the cold. They could travel over the Rocky Mountains beyond sea to sea, because we drove from St. John's, Newfoundland to Victoria, BC. And the only really thing that was negative about the whole initiative was the car was over $100,000. But the one thing that came out of it is don't drive across the Trans-Canada Highway in the middle of winter. That's for sure. It was pretty bad. So, but it was pretty cool. The roadster was really low to the ground, so the snow was coming over the hood, and it was, it was driving through foot and a half deep snow with studded tires on, because there's a 900-pound battery right above the studded tires from Scandinavia that I brought in for the vehicles. We also had another Tesla Roadster in the trailer that was being pulled by a 4x4 crew cab in case the car went down, because this had never been done before. And because we had media staged all the way across the whole continent in Canada, we really wanted to make sure that we made it right. But there was many times when the roads were closed just after we crossed. Crazy snowstorms, windstorms, where people were blown off the ditch and they sadly died in the ditches when I was coming through there in that area. Rock slides that closed the roads, like ice that was shedding off the Portman Bridge in BC, and they shut the road about 20 minutes after I crossed. Even in Manhattan on Vancouver Island was a mess, and I thought I was home free once I got to Vancouver, right? So, but I really couldn't, didn't really get, to the point where I could relax until about 20 minutes before we hit Victoria, so BC. But ultimately, so then the next year we did 99% of all of Canada connected, 99% of all Canadians with free to use EV infrastructure that was a few 100% ahead of the EV in essence, because the 40 amp standard was the standard for North America. or the 6.6 kilowatt. So I commissioned the 19.2 kilowatt J, 1772 and 100 amps. So, but had to downgrade it to 9 because the Roadster wouldn't even charge on a 100 amp charger. It wouldn't even recognize it. So that's really what we did there. And it was really just a charitable type of situation to prove to the world that this is all possible. And, we can have cleaner air to breathe. We can travel cheaper or for free if you bought a $100,000 EV at that point. But that was about the only negative thing. And really just inspire and empower people to believe that we can do this, that we got this. And since then, it's been a lot of, we got pulled into the States because you couldn't travel across the States in an EV back then, and then the Caribbean and Norway. The funniest install was actually on a tree in Cuba. That was the first charger install there. It was bungee corded to the trunk of a tree. So,
So what do you think about the politics side? What do you think? I mean, there's lots of political change, at least possible. What do you think that's going to mean? I mean, obviously back then it was like a new thing, I guess, or a new to them thing, or new to you thing, or new to people. But what do you think's changed?
Because, globally, like we got media around the world in all different languages and scripts. I spent probably about 50 grand on a company to aggregate all the media we got, and it was thousands of articles, right? But the bad thing is I couldn't really read any of them. So it was a very expensive lesson, but there was a dashboard there that showed that all the media was more than 51% positive that we got around the world, than negative, right? Yeah. And so that was what the money, I guess, was good for. But it's really too bad that it has been politicized. It didn't need to be. Really, China just jumped on a technology that made sense for everyone, I believe, on this call, and a lot more. If you can travel hundreds of kilometers for a cup of coffee worth of electricity, that's a good thing. If you can travel with no tailpipe emissions, and people will live longer and live healthier and happier because of that, that's a good thing. If climate change exists and we need to decarbonize, well, traveling with no tailpipe emissions is a good way to do it, right? And so, it's just that the Chinese were, they just got on the bandwagon. They did it, and they ran with it. And so, in other parts of the world, the developed world, we just debated over it for a decade, and that's really caused this situation. So, it's really at our it's our fault because we just didn't adopt it. We debated one another. We're trying to figure out a reason why it won't exist, and that was the reason why we did that World's Longest Green Highway Initiative project, was to sort of blow the world's mind that EVs exist at a point where like less than 1% of people probably believed or knew anything about an EV or believed that it would exist or survive. But yet more than 50% of people globally believed in UFOs.
Understood.
So you can imagine how difficult it was putting EV infrastructure in across the continent in 2012, right? So, so now here we are. We debated, we did a lot of false starts on the automaker side of things. Some of that was panic induced, and so they went too far. They went pure EV, and really, I've advised a bunch, but they really should have went plug-in hybrid first. It's an easier step, and then from there, as the battery price drops per kilowatt hour, just keep increasing the size of the batteries on the hybrid vehicles, and eventually, once the hybrid vehicle can go 500K, I still have gas or more, but 500K on just pure electric, then they could drop the gas piece, right? But too many panicked, didn't really look for outside advice, I would say. And then they had to backtrack because it was just too big of a leap for them. So they had to backtrack to get their balance, and then they're moving forward now, right? So, but that's put them into a bad position, competitively wise, on a global scale, and they're going to lose the Chinese market because of it, and because of the delay, they're probably going to lose a lot of the other countries' markets, the developing country markets, because it's sort of like Mexico, right? They went from no phone to the cell phone, and not really landlines. And there, a lot of other countries are basically going to do the same thing, I think, with that whole EV infrastructure, pure EVs, this sort of thing, from those Chinese markets. So that's just my personal opinion, but I've been wrong before.
Appreciate that. Larry, I know you don't have any opinions on politics and EVs. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what your thoughts are.
Well, first of all, Ken, you indicated that there was some skepticism about UFOs, but I think if you look at some of the people that are in politics, they had to come from another planet. So maybe UFOs do exist. I'm apparently going to be the skeptic on this show. I think the EVs are terrific in their own right, and the people that have them love them. I salute that. I'm 100% opposed to the government in my insane country mandating that everybody has to have an EV. Prohibition didn't work in the 20s when they said you can't drink liquor. And as usual, they rushed it. It didn't make any sense. They don't have enough chargers, blah, blah, blah. My feeling is EVs are going to be around forever. I think you hit on the real key, which is some of the manufacturers like Toyota, Honda, they've looked at hybrids as making more sense. So it's not all in or not in at all. But my own suspicion is the market will stay stable. It might grow a little bit. I don't think it's going to be 100%. And you have yin and yang, because while people claim it's cleaner and it's this and it's that, it's still, the minerals are still from China, who from an American perspective are not our best friends. And there's plenty of drawbacks, and plenty of people are blind to the fact that so many things come from petroleum products. And to use an even older expression, throwing the baby out with the bathwater, yeah, we're going with clean energy, everything else is bad. In the United States, we decided to stop pumping, we would stop producing to the extent we were, and we'd let countries that could care less about the environment start pumping. So if that's not insanity, I don't know what is. But as far as the vehicles, some of them are amazing. Obviously, how quick they are, and being a bit of a lead foot, I respect that. And I know that people that have them swear by them, and I don't have anything against them. I just politically never thought it made any sense to say everybody has to drive when it didn't make sense financially. Our infrastructure, the biggest state in America that has EVs, the highest proliferation is California. They already have brownouts because they don't have enough electricity. As far as the politics, you've got the strangest of bedfellows of all time, because you've got Elon Musk buddying up with Donald Trump, and obviously it's in Musk's interest to sell as many Teslas as possible. But I think even he's reasonable enough to realize that the car is not for everybody. So I do think we'll see a political shift. I think if Trump gets in, you'll see a little bit less emphasis, or a lot more emphasis, on subsidies and the different manufacturing. And if Kamala Harris gets in, this whole conversation will move, because the United States will cease to exist. Ian and I will be doing this broadcast from Costa Rica. Other than that, I have no stuff going through. And if you don't agree with me, Ken, I'll meet you on the UFO later for dinner.
Yeah, I thought you were going to be meeting in Venezuela.
No, the oil's too dirty, and now that you've turned me into a conspirationalist, I don't want to do anything that's going to do there.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for that, Larry.
Someplace where there's no pollution and no overuse, and I believe that would be Mars. But since we know we can't go by Boeing because they can't get their act together, I guess we're back to Richard Branson, which will probably piss off Elon Musk. I don't know. The whole thing's get really complicated. I better start writing this stuff down, and I'm confusing myself.
Interesting you say that. I mean, we had a lot of talk about, or I guess some talk about China, being that China makes a lot of components for cars, whether it be Taiwan or mainland China. I had the opportunity to go there in 2019. And as pointed out, 40% of the cars sold in the world are sold there. And the longest embedded market from a traditional OEM point of view, I think, is Volkswagen from the 80s. But what you're seeing is a massive amount of competition in that market for people wanting to adopt technology. And tariffs.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I just read something in the Wall Street Journal that Volkswagen's having their own issues with the EVs and the productions thereof. I'm sure Brent and Ken are familiar with that.
Oh yeah, I mean they've invested, I think, more than most. I think Ford was number 2, but Volkswagen was definitely there. But what's interesting when you roll that back, and Tesla's another one that's trying to get, I think, an exemption for this tariff that's just been launched in Canada. I'm assuming the U.S. will be following if it isn't already. But the question there is, as you see tariffs against Chinese-made products, whether that be BYD or Chery or whatever the manufacturer is, how do you feel that's going to impact, not just Chinese-made electric cars, but other brands like Tesla, for example, that makes cars in China for foreign export because of the cost? I mean, what do you think? Maybe we can start with Brent on that, since he's probably all over that. Yeah. I'm sure.
Thank you. Whenever you have protectionist tariffs, all you do is forestall the inevitable. And the inevitable is the fact that competition ultimately is going to happen. You can't just tariff your way out of, doing business with the world. And when the Japanese came over in the early 70s and they made things smaller, safer, quicker, whatever, more efficient, the fuel shocks of the early and mid 70s and all that, the Japanese automakers were bringing over smaller cars that were more efficient and just kicking the crap out of the U.S. auto market. But the U.S. auto market ultimately was made better because of that competition, because they had to build cars more efficiently. They had to build them safer. They had to build them better. They had to build them more solid, right? If you have an insular market where you don't have to compete, you will put out the same crap year after year after year, and people will buy it because it's the only thing they can buy. I think competition from the Chinese is going to be good at the end of the day. I think we have to be very careful, though, because there is a lot of subsidizing in China of their domestic auto production. So we do have to be very mindful of that. But let's face it, here in the United States, we have backdoor incentives. We don't necessarily incentivize the manufacturers as much, but we incentivize the purchase of their product by having these rebates, state and national rebates. So it's a little disingenuous of us to say that we can have all kinds of help for people to buy the products, but the Chinese subsidize the production of the products, and therefore we have to slap them hard with tariffs. And ultimately, it also hurts us because those countries then put tariffs on our, pickles and toothbrushes and whatever the hell else we're sending to them. So we have to be very, very mindful of the balance in this world, and just understand that competition at the end of the day, makes things better. Listen, if there weren't better looking, smarter, and richer guys out there, you wouldn't be as nice to your wife. So let's understand.
But wait a minute. The topic, as I read it, was politics tied in with EV.
Yeah.
And what I said, I stick by that. They didn't imply there would be competition. Our current liberal Democrat administration said we want all gas cars to go away. So that's kind of the anti-competition. And as far as tariffs and the rest of it, I agree with you. Protectionism generally tends to backfire on the people trying to do it. But it still comes back to the thing when you listen. If we got on this call and I said, "Yeah, I'm Larry, I'm Ian's friend," and you can't talk about that, your first impulse is going to be to talk about it. Right? If you got kids, the only way to get a kid to do something is to tell them not to do it. Okay. See, I have an assistant, and you don't have an assistant. I'm sorry, it's a personal joke. But listen, I'm completely with you guys, only in the sense that you can't. I don't care what the policy is. You can't force illogical things on logical people. Okay, if you can show me that. Listen, I'm an American, and I wasn't driving yet, but I fully remember my mother and father complaining about the gas lines because it went off your license plate. You had it was 73, 74 week, completely miscalculated. You're right. The Japanese not only built better cars, but they were more fuel efficient. And the lunatics in our companies like that, we build them, they'll buy them, and people want big cars. Well, that was till you couldn't get gas and you couldn't afford gas. And I get that. But I still think it comes down to you offer a great product, and the people that think electric cars are great, they're sold. You couldn't unsell it.
Mhm.
But the problem was not the car end, the political end, saying this is the only thing you're going to have, and we're going to freeze everything out, which discounted. You made a joke, Ken, about that back then. One of the problems was it was $100,000, and people couldn't afford it. Well, there's still a whole lot of people that can't afford EVs, and there's a lot of infrastructure. There was I don't even know if it's a scandal anymore in my country because we're burning money like it's tissue paper, but they spend billions of dollars and put in 8 chargers across the country. I got a feeling if me, Brent, and Ken started a company for $1 million, we'd find a way to put up enough chargers. So I think it's just a matter of, from the political end, there has to be, look at this. Yeah, I just jumped from our lunatic president to Socrates, moderation in all things. If you look at things and say, here's what we're going to do and here's where we're going to work, hence the hybrid, I think you'd capture a lot more people. But whether you're in Canada or the United States, nobody likes to hear, this is what we're doing, you have no choice, particularly when the infrastructure is not there. You guys are very bright. Neither one of you can argue right now the infrastructure is ready. If tomorrow every car on the road was electric, it'd be a disaster.
We had some comments here, Larry. Not to get political, we had some comments from Chris Schaefer from LinkedIn and also Saz Perez from LinkedIn and some from YouTube as well. But the one that was interesting, strictly from a political point of view, was from Chris Schaefer. He said, the push for electric cars started in 2007 when George W. Bush signed the Energy Independence and Securities Act. The Democrats simply said, hey, that's a good idea. So that's his opinion. I'm not familiar with the act, but I'm happy to send you a citation from that bill.
It's okay. Chris is obviously one of those guys that was on the UFO. Okay, because obviously, since his vice president just endorsed Kamala Harris against Donald Trump, you know how I feel and stand on that. Other than that, I have no strong feelings. Go ahead, Brent. Please.
Brent's had an opinion on that one.
I'd like to speak to that, Larry, if I may. I agree with you on several points. One, EVs are.
Wait a minute. We should just stop the show now because I'm mentally disabled and you're very bright. I'm just going to stop if you agree with me. Ken, it's been nice knowing you. You can hit stop. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
we can just cut that. I agree with you.
Go ahead.
So I do. In many ways, I agree that EVs are not necessarily for everyone. There are very remote areas where there aren't a whole lot of charging infrastructure yet. There are areas that that they just aren't prepared for it yet. But 90%, 85% of the U.S. is well within range of charging opportunities, home charging, solar charging, to make it a reality for most people. For all people, no. And I love what Ken said earlier, that we should have had more of a transition where people could slowly just stop using gasoline, just keep plugging in every night, getting used to it. You don't make somebody change by changing their world completely overnight. You change it incrementally and slowly. It's just like good habits and bad habits happen slowly. We just do things and continue to do things, and suddenly that's what we do, right? And so I think hybrids probably had more of a place in the transition. I think it really was a hard shift. People love progress, but they hate change. That's what our friend.
Wait a minute. I agree with you. I agree with you completely, and I don't want to sound like a smart aleck, but think about how crazy it is that you said certain remote areas. Now I know I'm very friendly with Dan over the last couple of years, and I know there's parts of Canada that are so far, basically the same landmass as us, but much fewer people where you can go a long distance. But Chicago's not a remote area; it's one of the largest cities in the United States. And these cars turned into popsicles when they had a bad thing.
No. Here, let me speak directly to that directly now. There are people buying EVs that don't know squat about EVs, right? If you're a chucklehead and you leave your car on the street until you're at 5%, 3% state of charge, and then you limp that thing in at 0 to a supercharger, guess what, pal? That supercharger is not going to charge that battery because that battery needs to use its own native electricity to heat itself up to accept that high rate of charge from the supercharger. So the lesson from that is don't be a chucklehead. And the lesson
wait a minute. As far as
hold on.
Yeah,
Go
but
ahead.
you're using heated rhetoric, and that's my job on the show. I'll be unemployed, and then I won't be able to get a job anywhere except Tesla. I hear he's hiring people like me. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
All right. Well, he fired a lot of perfectly good people like me, but at the end of the day,
I rest my case.
If you don't understand how to own something and you don't understand how to maintain it, then literally somebody's going to come with a camera, stick it in your face with an agenda and go, what's up? I've been here for 3 days now. My car's been plugged in and it won't accept the charge. Well, no kidding, Chucklehead, because you don't know how to use your car, right? Just like if I stick the gas nozzle in the back window of my car to fill the car with gas because I'm filling up my car. No, idiot, put it in a gas tank. So the fact is that people are selling these cars. They couldn't give a rat's ass whether you understand them. People are buying these cars who don't have a clue how to use them. And then the cameras are in their face, 30 degrees below zero in Chicago going, what's wrong? Oh, I can't charge my car. Well, no kidding, Chucklehead, because you don't understand your car, right?
You just made the
Chicago since, hold on. I've been driving in Chicago since 2017 electric, pure electric, done deal. Right? And I have no problem. You know why? Because I understand my car.
You're not a chucklehead. But listen,
Chucklehead.
this is going to sound funny, but I'm about to line up with you and Ken. I agree with both of you. But think about it. Let's forget about what we're doing. Everybody on this show is reasonable. The lunatics in my country that are currently in power, okay, lunatics, want to mandate it. I agree with you. I think half the country are idiots. So if you're now going to mandate that 100% of people have to work with technology that they don't understand, what the hell do you think is going to happen? Let me ask you a question. Brent, how long have they now been putting messages on packets of cigarettes that this will kill you? People are still smoking. People are still getting in the car drunk and driving. So I'm with you. All I'm saying is I believe that the EVs are here to stay. The people that have them love them. A guy like you, you're never going to get anything else. It's in your DNA. You love it. You respect it. You love how quick it is. I'm with you. That's why, like with listen, you're not going to put an 84-year-old guy that's a little heavy in a Ferrari, can't get in the damn car. So the point is,
somebody would try and sell him that car.
Well, that's why I like you already. Hey, Brent, I'm going to hang with me and him are going to hang together. We'll insult everybody at the bar. And then Ken will come in and smooth everything over, right? Tell that's how the dynamics go.
Well, I first of all need to Wikipedia chucklehead because I've never heard that before.
Oh, yeah.
I believe a chucklehead is someone that buys technology that isn't aware of how to use it. A chucklehead is someone that does things that make no sense, that are counterintuitive, or to make a shorter definition because he ends on a time frame, a chucklehead we call a Democrat. But go ahead. Other than that, I have no strong feelings.
Because I know that you guys have been both quoting, I think, Socrates, right? So, but I think Trump had said that he was also related. So when you were, going back and forth between that, Larry, it doesn't really matter because
Trump is a stone 100% lunatic and narcissist. I would never debate that, and anybody that does is a chucklehead. I do not, but I like his policies. Okay, I'm not looking to date him. I'm not looking to go to the prom with him. But tell me the last president other than Harry Truman that wasn't a chucklehead. Kennedy was having sex in the pool with women while Jackie was taking a nap. Lyndon Johnson watched animals have sex. That was his version of porno. Look it up. Okay. Nixon fixed the race, a Republican, then he won 49 of the states. It was like Mike Tyson in his prime fixing a fight with your grandmother. They're all nuts. I'm a Jew. I just want somebody that'll keep an eye on Israel and not open the border and not shut off gas. So if somebody does want to drive, they can use it. And I am truly not a chucklehead. I'm not so sure because he invited me on the show, but that's open.
Well, I would say that in regards to the roadmap that I put together for Canada, we're one of the world's largest oil and gas exporters, and we have basically all the minerals we need to create batteries here, right? And so one of the issues a lot of people bring up, one of the last issues on the EV is that batteries cause more emissions than a gas car does, right? Well, I think that's sort of an argument on the China thing. Is a lot of minerals go to China, then they're manufactured there, processed there, or processed and manufactured, refined, and then typically the battery plants should be beside the auto plants because you don't really want to be shipping batteries. And so, my roadmap for Canada was, if we can create zero emission tailpipe vehicles that can travel hundreds of kilometers or miles for the price of a cup of coffee or a Starbucks. That can actually lower our cost of production and distribution in our economy, hence making our economy more competitive, hence driving up revenues in our economy, because Canada, spends a lot of money around the world helping people. And so Canada's grid is also one of the greenest grids in the world. So I really thought that, if we did it right up here, and we could basically do what China did, but in Canada, and not debate it up here as has been done in a lot of other modern countries. Canada could have supplied the batteries really for the world, and we could have mined it, refined it, manufactured it, set up the auto plants here or across the border, as the Canada-U.S. trade has been for my entire life. And the battery industry would have been larger than the oil and gas industry in Canada. And so Canada could have helped more countries around the world with that model. So that was really my strategy there. And if we can travel around the country and tourists can come here and they can travel for a cup of coffee, or actually for free, because on our Sun Country Highway network around the world, it's free to use. And I'm rolling out something else new here. You'll find out about that next year. That should sort of set the new tone for transportation. But that would really make the world a better place. So that was really my goal. The reason I created the 100 amp J1772 charger level, or anything above 40 that was on the J1772 charger, and even the manufacturer Clipper Creek that I commissioned to make it, it took me months to convince them to make it, because even they said it was crazy at that point. But I was looking at the grid. How do we get, if the EV, if we can do whatever we can do to make sure the EV survives, then that means we can get battery storage. Then that helps me hit a goal that I've been working on for 33 years. But those components and a lot more were part of my initiative that I'll be rolling out in a bunch of years. And that'll solve a lot of the problems around the world. But I needed battery storage, and I needed the EV to get there. And so that was really my strategy. But by going to a 100 amp charger, we can get vehicles powered up very inexpensively at home, get them off the grid before peak load comes in. And then once battery storage comes in, we can drop in a lot more renewables and tidal and nuclear, because for decades, Ontario's been sending nuclear power to the US every night for free. And for quite a few decades, paying the Americans to take it for free. So, as I said, Canadians are typically pretty friendly, giving their neighbors free power, right? For decades, and paying them to take it. How many people do that?
Hold on. You're obviously incredibly reasonable. And I love the fact that you anticipated what the problem could be and worked on a solution. So I think let's just look at a couple things and let me get your opinion on it. First of all, the advantage a country like China has over your country and our country is they're autocratic. They don't have polls and say, what the hell should we do? This is what we're doing. Right? I don't think they took a lot of polls on whether they should cut the organs out of weakers, but that's a whole different issue. The second thing is, how about the weight issue? I'm the least dialed in EV guy, but I respect you and I respect Brent and Ian's my guy. I'm hearing things that the weight that you would need to increase the big trucks, which still move stuff all over the country, which is why both our countries have a little bit of inflation, blah, blah, blah. Is it true from what you've studied, because the two of you look like you've analyzed everything, I respect that if the weight is that much different, that they might have to restructure some of these bridges and some of these ways to get around? Because you seem like a solution guy to me, and so does Brent and Kent seem like solution guys, and I think we'll both agree. Look, your country's as bad as mine. The guy leading your country is like General Motors used to be, ready, fire, aim. Let's come up with a program, and we'll figure out later how it works and what to do with it. Do you see the weight as being much of an issue? You've studied this thing inside now, I can tell.
Yeah, coming from my civil engineering background, I'm not concerned at all about EVs. It's not cars and pickup trucks and vans that wreck the roads. It's the overloaded semis and really farm equipment that does that. Right now, farms are now using larger tires, more flotation, because they don't want to compact the soil, which allows them to get more yield or more crop per acre. But for the most part, batteries just keep coming down in size, right? They used to have the big bag bone or the big brick. And so as every year batteries are coming down about 10% in cost, and has been for a long time. And so like when batteries were around $2,000 a kilowatt, my goal was they needed to get down to 20. At 20, that's disruptive. So from 2000 to 20. And I thought it would take actually a disruption in technology to be able to break that, to get down to that far. But I really think we're going to hit $20 without a disruption in battery technology. So that means that there will be a battery disruption technology coming, and that could drive batteries per kilowatt hour down to maybe $2 from 2000. So,
well, nature abhors the vacuum, and we all know that if there's money involved, there is a way to make a profit, but by coming up with a good idea. Hey, look again. I don't know anybody, whatever side of the fence you're on, that doesn't admire Elon, because this guy's looking so far ahead of what is now. I mean, it's amazing where this guy came from. I mean, Boeing, how much bigger of an established company can be? Boeing's hoping this guy can recognize the astronauts. And if you would have if we would have been at a bar 30 years ago and said, yeah, this Tesla company is going to knock everybody on their butt, we would have said it's impossible, because we've seen 100 companies come up and fail.
Yep. So Brett, you haven't said anything for a little bit. I mean, we're talking about EV transition and battery technology.
I've just been enjoying Larry's show.
I'm trying to come out of my shell. My therapist says I'm too quiet, so I'm working.
So, I mean, do you think it's the cost of batteries? Do you think that's it? Or do you think it's like solid state? I mean, obviously the OEMs have backed off, but do you think that's a mistake?
The OEMs are doing what makes sense for them and their shareholders and their profit margins, right? At the end of the day, you can't really bad any industry for trying to preserve its place in the world and its profits, right? I mean, we're all about self-preservation. I mean, I'd like to say people are altruistic, but I've met too many of them, and I know they're not. And so, I think you've got a lot of competing interests in the marketplace. You get a lot of people fighting for people's attention and people's opinions, right? You've got the oil and gas industry that would like to continue, pumping, refining, shipping, burning, and rock, rinse, repeat, and so they've got a lot of vested interest in seeing a lot of FUD out there, a lot of false information, and that's all fine and good. But at the end of the day, like you had asked, the OEMs are backing off because people are backing off, and people are backing off because there's a large influx of information and disinformation out there that's causing people to hit pause. The fact of the matter is that electricity is just another form of fuel. And if you can understand that, if you can make it simple for people to understand that, when I was selling a Tesla, I used to tell people to come in, do you enjoy going to the gas station? Do you enjoy stinky hands? Do you enjoy having to be on the swivel late at night at the gas station because it's a good place to get robbed or shot? And the answer was always no. I said, well, do you have a garage? Yes. Well, you can go home and plug your car in every evening, and every morning you come up to a full tank of fuel. How would you like to never go to the gas station again unless you play the lotto or you like Slurpees? And the answer was always, no, I don't like going to the gas station. Awesome, then buy this. I mean, at the end of the day, if you make things too complex, people push back. If you make things too simple, then they buy things they're not equipped to operate. You have to find that middle, and that's where career changers can come in. You touch a lot of dealerships. You touch a lot of salespeople. I hope you don't touch a lot of salespeople, but you're out there talking.
Only the attractive chucklehead.
Hopefully you're stopping and shaking hands. But you're out there, and you can literally make an impact on them to help them to understand electric vehicles, to help them to understand the infrastructure, to show them the different apps where people can find local charging stations. People don't understand how to use these cars because nobody's teaching them. And the people that are selling these cars to them don't really care, with the exception of Tesla and Lucid and everything, where they literally are educating people. If you have a used Model 3 in the front row of a Chevy dealer, it could be any dealer, and the kid's there and he wants to make money selling you that Model 3, he's going to tell you whatever he needs to do to get you to buy that Model 3. You're going to take it home, you're going to park it at the curb, and you're not going to understand a thing about what you just bought. We need public education. We need people to understand these things. We need people to understand that it is not for everyone, right? If you live in an apartment building, you park on the street, you have no real decent access to charging, guess what? That car probably isn't for you right now. But as more and more public accessibility to charging happens in your area, fantastic. Now it's good for you right now. But the OEMs are backing off because not everybody can plug in their car. That's just the raw truth of it. And I love EVs, and I think everybody ultimately should adopt them. But the fact of the matter is the infrastructure still is not quite built out enough for a person that's living in a 100-unit apartment building that's parking 4 blocks away from their house, who doesn't use their car that often. It's just not a good idea for that person. And we have to accept that. Even if we're EV evangelists, we have to accept the fact that they're not for everybody right now.
Hey, Brent, if it makes you feel better, I do spread the word that with EVs, you have to be, just like with every other product, if you sound stupid, if you don't answer intelligently, they shut you down. Back to Socratic philosophy. Does that make Ken happy?
Thank you.
Socrates and Plato believed that the only thing that could be shared without someone being deprived is knowledge. Definitely, if you're drinking milk somewhere in deep Sahara, somebody doesn't have milk. So I'm all for that. But we're right, once again, we're back to the politics. Now follow it from this angle. I just met Brent and I just met Ken. But honest to God, I think both of you are smart as hell. And I'm pretty sure that whatever the hell you two guys do, you do it really, really well. I have no humility, Brent. You've already figured that out. I'm the world's best trainer and recruiter. Ian seen me hold people in the palm of my hand for 3 hours. They didn't want to look at their iPhone. Okay? If you said to me, Larry, I just made a deal with Richard Branson or Elon. They put up $1 billion, and me and Kent are going to put charges on, I'd probably buy anything. It's not it's the fact that everything the government touches gets screwed up. Because it's not their money, it's the people's money, and there's nothing but waste and miscalculation, right? I mean, all kidding aside, it was like $8 billion. Brent, could you imagine what you, me, and Ken, crazy as I am, could do with $8 billion in terms of an advertising campaign in charge of making chargers more reliable? So it's the politics not only of forcing people, but then not having the wherewithal to make things make sense. But no, I always, my thing is, I believe it or not, I got pulled into a evangelist for EVs, John Ellis and Doreen Cage, and they called me up and said, we want you to be involved. I said, I don't want to be about EVs. They say, we like your enthusiasm. And I always tell people, you want to know as much as you can about every one of your products, because you can sell off an EV to an ICE, and you can sell off an ICE to an EV. But in a market that's contracting the way we have after COVID, you want to make sure you have every tool in your toolbox. You want to be able to lease. You want to be able to go to a credit union. You want to be able to finance. You want to be able to pay cash. Brent, I don't know how involved you are with car business. A while back, I was a salesman and a dealer. I remember there was dealers. This is going to sound ridiculous. Oh, we don't bother with the used cars. We just wholesale them out. That's nuts. I know people that quit the business when they started using computers. It's too complicated. So believe it or not, I'm with you guys as far as the vision. The people that have them love them. I encourage everybody to be as knowledgeable as possible. I just balked at a government, any government mandating, this is it, you have no other choice, and then not building up the infrastructure. So if everybody did do it, the whole country would shut down because we don't have the grid. But all kidding aside, as much fun as I'm having, both you guys are 100% right. The problem is everybody on this program is smart, reasonable. And yet the people we elect in both countries are not smart and reasonable. It's just the truth. I would vote for Brent in a minute. Do you want to run against Trudeau? I know he's retiring, but maybe he can get out of office early. You do one of those recalls. We'll let Ken organize. He's an engineer.
Yeah, you know, I couldn't fake that I was Canadian. I can't say sorry. So it just won't work. But
well, we'll work it up to it slowly, like EVs. Just learn to say A. And carry a hockey stick around. We'll get you.
Well, I could move up to Minnesota and do that. I don't have to make the trip all the way to Canada.
It's true. And the Vikings won yesterday, so it's a happy state this week.
Look at geography, right? Canadians are actually more aligned with the state right below them than they are with the province right beside them. Mentality, right? And the entire nation. And I know I've studied each of those provinces for decades. And the mentality culture, what's holding the economy back. A lot of it's between the ears. It's really things that they repeat out their mouths. and we just need to stop planting those seeds, because those negative seeds then plant throughout our province, and they plant throughout other provinces, and then across the border into the States. So we really need to be careful what we talk about. I will say that in Canada we have the Inuit, or the old Eskimos, right? So a really good salesperson, they said, hey, you can sell ice to Eskimos, right? Well, the Eskimos already have ice vehicles. They don't have EVs in Canada, right? So we sell ice to Eskimos up here, right? So but one of the other issues is the EV infrastructure. Going back to what Larry said, in Canada, we didn't really support non-network chargers, right? They needed to be not $1,000 chargers for government funding, or they needed to be, say, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 for government funding.
Wow.
That's helped our EV infrastructure in Canada big time, because we connected the whole country, the whole continent, the first country and continent in the world that had 99% of that had 99% of Canadians connected with a free-to-use EV infrastructure over a decade ago, well before Tesla, started putting in charging stations, right? And that was all non-network chargers. Those chargers are still working today, 13 years later, 12 years later, 11 years later, 10 years later, with no monthly fees, no annual fees, no subscription fees of $60 a month, even if nobody showed up to plug in that month per charger plug. There's been a lot of missteps, I would say. We didn't need network chargers until all of the roads were connected, and there was a ton of chargers out there, right? But the governments went with, I'm assuming the lobby to force people to spend, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 on a charger instead of $1,000 for the same amount of power, right? So that there's a lot of intrigue coming from a lot of sectors. A lot of people will criticize the oil and gas sector for not being above board, but I've seen a lot of it in the EV sector. So for us in the EV sector to think that we're better than others is completely false. And so as far as I'm concerned, because I've seen things behind the scenes that were pretty immoral, right? That held back the EV and movement, right? Infrastructure wise, decisions on the car maker's side. Even Tesla's made a lot of decisions that have held back the adoption of the EV, right? So
what do you think based on that? What do you think on the used side? I mean, I know Brent's probably an expert here too, but when you look at depreciation of EVs and you look at new models coming online, and you look at the resale value of them, isn't that the answer to fix this? I mean, what do you think?
Well, I think you've had the perfect storm of two things happening at the same time. You've had Elon, who needed to keep his factories running, and so he needed to cut pricing to continue to increase his share of the marketplace, or maintain Tesla's share of the marketplace. So they cut pricing to stay competitive, especially in the interest rate environment that we're in right now. And you had Hertz, who basically bought 100,000 Model 3s, had no real love from Tesla when it came time to have to repair these EVs or body shop body work. Like every other OEM cuts Hertz a deal on fenders and body panels and windshields and all the rest of that, right? Tesla doesn't cut anybody a break on anything. And so when Hertz had an accident with a car, it costs 2-3x what it would cost them to fix a Chevy Malibu with the same accident, right? So sooner or later, Hertz is like, we're getting pounded here. Tesla's not helping us. Screw them. We're going to dump these cars on the market. We're going to get out of them. And so you had a manufacturer decreasing the list price of their new cars. You had Hertz dumping all their used cars. And you had this happening basically at the same time. And we came off this COVID high of pricing and all the rest of it, where basically you pay whatever just to buy a car. So you've got this accelerated slide of pricing that's driven on the new and the used side all at the same time. So the sad fact of the matter is these cars don't depreciate faster on their own. They depreciate faster because of these artificialities of decreasing the new car pricing and also Hertz dumping 100,000 cars into the marketplace in basically one fell swoop.
And
a
the
lot-
attendant publicity that was everywhere.
Yeah, there was a ton of bad publicity that came out of that as well. And quite frankly, Tesla could have handled it better. And I'm sure there's probably a lot of things they can debrief about that. But the fact of the matter is they should, if they're going to have big corporate relationships like this, they have to realize that they have to cut those very people a break when they buy 100,000 cars from them.
But do you
It's like a
think?
salesman
But do you
not taking
think
care of
that?
his customer and not getting repeat referral business? You got to keep your customers happy so it becomes a continuous cycle. And I think that's one of Elon's failings. Similar to Trump, he's an unbelievable. Not saying Trump is brilliant. Elon is such a brilliant thinker, but socially, it seems like he's a little backwards, like Trump is. He says and does. He didn't do himself a favor when he was smoking the big spliff on on one of the podcasts. He does some things that might not aid in the corporate push in a positive fashion.
It's public knowledge that he is on the spectrum and a little bit. So I think he does have sometimes issues understanding people or relating to people that are somewhere way below his.
No, wait a minute. Was that Trump or was that Elon? Because I think Trump's a little.
Yeah, you can basically plug that into either one. Yeah. So yeah, I think we've got this perfect storm of somebody running the company. Somebody once told me that Tesla is the only publicly traded monarchy, and it's true. I mean, Elon says, and it happens. And if you push back against him, you're invited to seek employment elsewhere. So, yeah, I'm off about Elon. I love the company. I love what they're doing. I love what I helped to build. And I hope that they continue to be successful in this world. But yeah, there are a lot of hurdles, both external, internal, political, economic, that we probably need a 10-hour show to totally dissect.
Oh yeah, I mean we're out of time, unfortunately. But I guess final thoughts. So go ahead. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. In regards to depreciation of the EVs, a lot of that's due to battery costs. As far as I'm concerned, that's an awesome thing. Like I bought 2 Roadsters, right? So I had backup to when I was crossing the country that winter. But they were almost $200,000, and they could have been over 200,000 with options. But where I'm going with it is that wasn't bought. They weren't bought as an economy car. So my goal was to drop battery prices and see it go down to about $20 a kilowatt. I'm happy that EVs are dropping. The people that bought these cars initially don't care about depreciation of the vehicles. They bought it because it gave the world some hope. It gave them some hope that they could actually help solve climate change, help reduce pollution, help make their garages smell better, help do something for their kids rather than just argue and debate with other people. So, if EVs are too expensive for some people, that's okay. Other people are going to buy them, and that's going to keep dropping down the price of EVs. Battery storage isn't going to increase. That's going to drop down the price of EVs. It will get to the point very quickly, I believe, where everyone can afford an EV for the most part, right? And at the end of the day, not everybody needs an EV. An e-bike would work fine for a lot of people. So we should look at, okay, what can we do to disrupt the EV? Well, that's e-bikes, right? Our government's, giving rebates on them, right? They're a much lower carbon footprint. They're much lower cost. And governments, based upon the rebates on vehicles in some places, could just give people a free e-bike rather than giving a discount or rebate on the car. That would get a lot more cars off the roads, et cetera. So I'm just trying to give a broader perspective on things, right? EVs still clutter the road, right? E-bikes don't, right? So, and I'm just thinking that we need to really take a more balanced approach, like Larry said. And hey, Larry, is that a real accent, or are you just trying to be cool?
No, that's a true Philadelphia. Spent too much time in New Jersey and New York selling car accent.
Awesome. All right, I'm jealous.
Yeah, Larry, any final thoughts?
Yeah, it was an absolute pleasure to meet Brent and Kent. You guys seem really cool. If you want to reach out on LinkedIn, I'd love to have you guys as connections. Love it.
Thank you, Larry. You too.
Yep.
And if you need help getting any of your dealerships on EVs, give me a shout. I'll help you out.
I'll tell you what. You know what? Could you do this, either one of you, because you're both so smart? I have a program called Lethal Sales. It's on LinkedIn every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If either one of you want to come on and talk about EVs, talk about what you do, we would love it. You just dial in, everybody gets a chance to talk, nobody pontificates. It's fun and loose, similar to Ian's show, and I would love to get input from either one or both.
Yeah,
Lethal Sales every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun show, actually.
Ian, can you connect us? I'd appreciate that.
Absolutely. Happy to do it. Have yourself a great day.
Bye.
Thanks for coming on.
Bye.
All right.
Yep.
Bye.